Okay, I'm excited to call this meeting to order for our first River Street Ad hoc committee meeting. Can we do a roll call
Yes. Counselor Turgeson,
here?
Ted Ebora,
Here.
Bob Woodruff,
Here.
Jim Talt,
Here.
Stephen Bertel,
Here.
Jacob Heister.
Here.
Mark Seeger,
Here.
David Hetty,
Here.
and Counselor McBride. Not present. Okay. Thank you.
Now that we've done the official roll call, I would like to do more of an informal introduction, maybe who you are and who you are representing as part of this ad hoc committee. So I'm Jane Ferguson. I'm city council for District 3. I also live on South Center and Third, so just 2 blocks off, block and a half off of River Street. So
My name is Bob Woodruff. I live at 320 Dayton Avenue, just about a block over here. My wife and I moved to Newburgh in 2006 and have done a lot of volunteer work in the city. And, maintaining the historic character of the town is something that's very important to us. So, I advocated, asked to be appointed to this committee. 2 things that I'm really looking to see is that, safety is addressed. I'm concerned that with new pavement, lousy pavement might not be the preferred traffic calming technique, but it is very effective. And I'm concerned about speeds with improved pavement and how the city's going to address that. And then also the kind of character and nature of it. One thing, I went and spoke to the meeting that the folks had over at the church. And one of my goals is that this development is not ugly. That, that's a loose term, but I want it to be in keeping with the nature of a historic downtown, small town.
Mark Seeger, I'm probably the newest resident of River Street. Been here less than a year. Moved to Newburgh about 2 years ago. Found my wife and I found our very first home, 53 years old, first time home buyers. And so we're ecstatic at owning a home. A little surprised that now where we're at, sitting here in this room. But both of us work at Friendsview, so we are about a mile away. We walk to work, we bike to work, we feel very much connected in a very short time to our community. I'm passionate about this because I think we can, I'm on 8th, so I'm at the south end of River Street and representing a bunch of these folks. But I'm passionate because I think that we can do something beautiful, do something that makes, well, hopefully most of us happy.
I'm Stephen Bertel. I'm very close to this guy. I'm also on 8th and River, kind of on the other side of 8th. And I've lived in my house. I've lived on River since 2018. Not our first purchase, but first one here in Newburgh. I've been living in Newburgh since 2000 when I attended George Fox. On and off. We've lived outside of Newburgh for stints, but always came back. It's kind of a vortex. But yeah, I'm here for the same reasons Mark is. I'm here to represent these guys behind me. Anyone on River Street, and this might have an impact.
I'm Jake Easter, or Jacob. Usually go by Jake though. I live on 3rd and River. We've been on 3rd and River for about 8 years. My wife grew up in Newburgh, born and raised. We were in Beaverton and moved back here to be somewhere a little bit smaller. Love the character. I think some of the similar comments that have been made to people that I'm trying to help represent are maintaining the character, concerns about shade, street coverage, things like that. And then for us personally, it's more the right-of-way impacts and things like that. Trying to make sure that whatever reclaim of right-of-way is done in a way that's fair to people who live on River Street. The last thing would be really curious how we got where we are in terms of the things that set this in place. I think that's one thing I'm hoping this committee can help have more light on. There's a lot of work that you've done in the past to get us to where we are right now and how these options got put in front of us. But maybe peeling back the onion a little bit on that, to understand what
Totally.
we're working with.
Hi, I'm Jim Salt. I live on the northwest side of town. But I've been pretty involved with the NURA Citizens Advisory Committee. And I was one of those that advocated strongly to, that we should go to work on River Street early, rather than developing some street down 14th or something like that, that wasn't gonna get used by all of you on a daily basis. So I have a kind of a long-standing interest in River Street, and oh, by the way, I was here about 20 years.
Good evening, my name is David Hetty, and I live over on Jody Court, which is pretty close to the high school. And I've been here 5 years, going on 6 years. And yeah, I have 3 kids in the public school. I live right off close to Elliott, so I guess I follow along tough projects in the city somehow. But yeah, so in my personal life, or professional life, I work with Habitat for Humanity and do a lot of community engagement work and organizational development. And so I love the process of working with people and listening and trying to find mutually beneficial agreements. Because I think sometimes when we get away from positions and look at what interests we have, we can find some really cool opportunities. So I'm a cyclist. I love active transportation. I think it's extremely important for safety, for building infrastructure for not just cycling, but for all ages, people of all abilities. And I think we can dream about the city as we continue to grow and develop, of having a nice connected network of active transportation. So yeah, I'm here because I want to listen. I want to do a good job understanding what's going on. I'm really interested in a connected bike infrastructure in our city. And last, I know there's big plans down there on the river, and I want to think about the future livability of Newburgh and how we're planning into the future.
So I'm TJ Santani, so I'm a transportation engineer, working with the city. My role in this committee is to listen to all of your questions, concerns, and provide answers from the perspective of technical items, code, things like that, but also considerations on construction cost, and then also recognizing there's a human element in this as well, not just a robot that wants to build an interstate, right? So I want to make sure that we're considering livability as part of this as well. But my role is to make sure that I give everybody the understanding and perspective of what this means to do from the engineering and construction perspective, and being open and honest about that.
Sorry, I didn't catch your name.
It's TJ. TJ. Yeah.
My name is Jennifer Delaney, and I'm the assistant to the city manager, helping moderate the meeting this evening.
And we decided that the ladies that usually run the council meetings should have a night off, so we're covering this one. I'm Will Worthy. You may not know that I am originally professionally a librarian, and I worked as a librarian for 30 years. I came to Newburgh in 2019 to fulfill my dream of becoming a library director of a full-service library in a beautiful town. Unfortunately, due to the bad ethics of previous city managers and due to the financial failings of the city, I was sucked into becoming the city manager, which meant I had to give up my beloved career, which was hard. So I'm not a professional city manager to trade. I'm a librarian to trade, but I'm going to continue to do the best I can for all of our residents. And I certainly do also want to hear everybody's opinions about what are the best things to do and how to proceed.
That is your dream job now.
Right? This is not my dream job.
Hello, everybody. My name's Ted Ebora, and I live in 6th and River Street. It's probably seen the big signs and my tree that everybody's been putting on. I've lived there since 1998. And I renovated that house. The house is probably over 100 years old.
was built in 1898, and when I started renovating it, didn't have a foundation, no wire, no plumbing, like rigged up plumbing. So I kind of built it from the ground up. But yeah, I mean, I've loved this town. I've lived in this town. I volunteered for the budget committee. I've been in the budget committee for a while. And other things that, you know, the city has that I can volunteer my time in. I'm interested in this project since it's on River Street. It's probably gonna affect the two big trees that are in front of my house, which is kind of the character of the house and the street. But yes, I'm kind of interested in what's gonna happen and how we're gonna go ahead and fix the street, which needs to be done. So,
Thank you all so much. I think it's just helpful to have a little bit of context of who we all are, given that we're gonna be spending some time together. So next, before we move into meeting official, I'd like to, we're gonna do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So one of the things that was asked was a question about how we got here as a community with focus on River Street and River Street improvements. So I'm going to do my very best to give a brief summary of some history that honestly predates me in a handful of ways. Will correct me. How we got here is a combination really of three kind of separate but related studies and community-based collaborative meetings. So one of those was the transportation system, which included ADA and like bicycle pathways and just transportation improvements for. Another separate organization that was closely involved was the Riverfront Master Plan group. And then the third was the NURA Citizens Advisory Committee that Jim Holt referenced. So each of these separate groups were similar to us here as an ad hoc. They were designed to be community-centered, really seeking intentional input from stakeholders throughout the community, which a vast majority of those individuals who participated were Newburgh citizens and Newburgh residents. Each of them had a little bit of a different lens. So transportation system looked at safety around ADA, traffic flows, traffic patterns, bicycles. It is an older study. I think it was last in 2007-ish. Was when that body of work was last updated. The Riverfront Master Plan incorporates that and builds on that from really that lens of there is a dream of developing riverfront and having a community that can balance both our amazing historical downtown as well as the potential new development that could happen there on the water. Similarly, that was a community-driven organization or body that put together the recommendations and thought processes around what that riverfront plan could potentially be for the city of Newburgh. And then NURA Citizens Advisory is, NURA is its taxing district that's kind of based on tax funding that helps to support redevelopment of specific concerns within Newburgh. So our Citizens Advisory Board really looked at what does our community need, what would help to support, and what would layer in with existing plans that are already in place within the city. One of the primary pieces of concern that layers both with transportation system recommendations riverfront potential, and then a fair amount of community feedback across time was the need for River Street to have some updates. So that is where kind of those three different bodies of work really come together, is each of them identify River Street as being a critical corridor from a community-based standpoint of connecting River Street and the downtown community, as well as the adjoining neighborhoods. So there's a lot of recommendations that were made. I think thematically, as I read them, looking at each of those documents, the things that really stood out was a lot of community input around how to have accessible and safe pedestrian-based access, ADA-related concerns, bicycle support. Traffic calming was called out several times within the course of these different documents. And each of them, I think, is important to highlight, and I think is probably very central to why many of us are here, is that River Street was really framed as more than just being a transportation corridor. In each of those documents, it is really framed as being a community-oriented complete street that is centered around that community and accessible to multimodal transportation with that framework around livability, with each areas of our town having that connector. How did I do on the history?
Very, very well. And if I may,
Please.
so some of this history actually, of course, predates any staff that arrived. I mean, for me, it was 2019 that I arrived here. A lot of the things that came into focus were when the Neura group reviewed the Neura plan, which was just a couple of years ago. And they reaffirmed after community engagement and after they met several times that the plan that was written through a variety of community engagement would be followed instead of changing the pathway within the plan. And so one of the higher up elements in the Neura plan was River Street, of course. Now, I'm going to be coming back to this point later, but it's important to know that Neura, what is Neura? Neura is all of the other taxing districts agreeing to come together to give Newburgh their property tax money on the condition that we, Newburgh, all of us, have agreed on a list of projects that we will spend that property tax money on. So that is the funding source that is Neura. And each of those agencies' boards, PCC, the school district, and TVFNR, their boards all affirmed the Neura plan, and they have given up this tax revenue.
Any questions about some of that history?
The riverfront master plan currently rolled into the city master plan entirely, or is that not necessarily cohesive?
So while I would certainly not represent myself as a planner or a land use specialist, I do know that the riverfront master plan is a subset of the city's overall set of master plans, in the same way that the transportation safety plan would be part of that.
So if we reference the city master plan, particularly on transportation, we should see something that encompasses the expectations of how River Street fits in and Riverfront fits in as a holistic plan. Does that make sense?
Once again, to be careful not to misrepresent myself as a land use specialist, so let's put a caveat on whatever I say.
That's fine.
So when cities develop zonal plans, like local master plans for a riverfront or Neura for a blighted area, as they call the mill site, right?
Yeah.
Those become facets of the overall master plan of the city. So it's more like the city is a master plan, it's a binder, and then these parts are inserted. How am I doing, Travis? Am I doing okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that helps. I was just trying to understand like the details and intent in the bigger picture. If they're all folded in there, that's the one document to reference to say, how does this look? Because I think somewhere it's referenced in, I think it was the master plan, that this is a view of what 2052 should look like 30-year outlook, right?
Yes.
So
It's
to
a,
understand that in context is helpful.
it's a very long lens.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, all of the master plan findings are eventually have a bow put on them
Mm.
as part of a comprehensive plan update. And that's another thing that we owe the state every 10, 15 years.
Okay.
So there's even another layer of that.
So one quick follow-up to that then. So you mentioned, Jerry, a community-oriented travel route. I don't know if I summarized that well, but like that's the idea for River, right?
Yes, a community-oriented complete street type of
Complete
was
street,
the
okay.
language that is.
Is there an example of where we've done a project already that you guys would say is a community-oriented complete street that we could reference?
I think, first of all, I can only speak for my time.
Sure.
This is the first phase of the NURA overall basket of projects. So I would say through the lens of the riverfront, there is nothing else that like this that has happened before. And in fact, only now has sufficient tax increment financing accumulated to be able to start the work. Or else if we had the tax increment financing a few years ago, we might have started sooner. So this would really be the first of its type and the first of an envisaging of the riverfront.
Are there different qualities, like, because I wrote that same thing down, community oriented complete street. How's that different than a collector street? And what makes it different, or are there kind of qualities or earmarks to a community oriented street?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So, when you hear the terms local, collector, arterial, those are engineering and transportation planning terms to describe the overall function that the road is supposed to serve within the system. So that is very like cut and dry. This road is intended to pass traffic from this area to this area, and typically in some sort of range of a total maximum amount of trips. Now, there's like a whole planning angle for how you identify those. Typically, a collector is supposed to connect areas of kind of attraction areas or areas by use. So for river, the example of that would be what was the mill site when it was a collector in downtown. So that's how that ends up as a collector being the north-south route. So that's from the engineering perspective, what that means. For what a complete street means, that phrase that Jerry kind of listed off, that does kind of mean something different in every community, but generalizing, what that means is it serves more than just a purpose to move traffic, right? A collector is entirely focused on moving traffic. A complete street is gonna serve purposes beyond that and be more of an asset to the community, which is why you would call it a complete streets project. Complete meaning it's not just about cars and trucks, it's about basically all the users. And particularly for collectors, that's important because an arterial is basically like a highway. Rarely are you gonna make that a community space, right? And a local is typically right in front of people's houses, so we don't have gathering spaces there. So collectors very often become the complete streets projects that we're talking about. Does that provide the context you're looking for? Yeah.
So the funding that we're gonna be using for the street project, is that only gonna be from the NURA pot and SDC?
So there are, as we envisage it today, each of the three possible options for design would be financed from a combination of tax increment financing basis from NURA, which would be about a maximum of $6 million, and system development charge money, which is already saved up to a total of about maximum of $4 million. In other words, for the current position that we're in with what's in the bank, we can afford a maximum of about $10 million all told from these two sources. If we were to do, because I want to give a complete answer.
Okay.
If we were to do option 4, which would be to not do it, then that would be a different pot of money, and that would be from transportation utility funds for grind and inlay. And those come from the source that's on your municipal billing statement, the transportation utility fee. And those are used for grinding inlay, slurry seal, and sidewalk improvements. So there's really two sources, option 1, 2, 3, or option X. Any complete redesign is allowed to use the NURA money. And if we did something that is more just a grind and inlay type approach, that would have to use tough dollars.
Do any of the option, or does option 4 forfeit money or just force it to be reallocated to a different project in the future?
The latter.
Okay.
It would force it to be reallocated from other city grind and inlay work.
And so I'm looking at the plans where the bike lane is required. And it's referring to the state law.
See if this, we're gonna get an
Okay.
overview on that one.
Go ahead, okay.
Perfect. So that was part of TJ's goal for tonight is to give us some of the rules, so to speak. Not like rules, but guidelines. Guidelines.
Guidelines and state statute.
So I do think that context about history is important, because it gives some information about the various bodies of work that have gone together to get us where we are. And I do think that there's really good opportunity with all of us here to gather what is going to be the best for the livability of River Street access, and what is a complete street look like for River, and how can we provide that information to council to help ultimately guide some decisions around long-term work to support the community. The good news, and I do genuinely think that this is good news, is that we are here now, which gives us a space to provide this information early. That there's no plan that has been picked, their design work has not fully started, that we really have the opportunity to gather information, to voice it, and to provide the type of feedback that I think can give the city really meaningful solutions. So that is the hope of this ad hoc. We do not have a set schedule, so we will be kind of scheduling our next meeting at the end of this meeting. Hopefully with kind of some agenda items and some goals in mind for where we want to go next. That I think will be based on some information that we get from TJ tonight. And the nice thing is that they have given me the power to say that the ad hoc is complete when I say it is complete. So we will see how we do working together and gathering information. I feel like all of you have been really highly motivated and really passionate about supporting this work. And so I genuinely think that we can do really good community-centered uplifting of voices. Take that to council. So with that, I might transition to TJ. Do you want to take it away?
Yeah, so I'm ready to on the line. So I have kind of two things I'm gonna cover just at a high level to help set some guidelines for what it means to, first is talking about defining what right of way is versus project impacts, because those are different things. And then number two is talking about the ORS code that requires the addition of some sort of bicycle facility for basically complete reconstructs. So these are just kind of two items that have come up a lot. I thought it would be good to start there and provide background. Feel free to ask questions at any point as I'm doing this. And I'll provide what context I can. So let me, Ted, we can, since you asked about the RS code, you can start there and then I'll cover the right of way piece after that. See if this will go. Okay, so this is very small, so let me try to zoom in on this. So this is gonna be kind of in the weeds, because it draws from state statute, so I'll do my best to talk through this. These are resources that can be shared with all of you, so I don't expect you to write down everything on here. But this is a flow chart that ODOT provides that basically tells you what your responsibilities are as the city relative to implementing ORS 366.514. So some background on this state statute. State of Oregon was the first state in the whole country to pass a law that actually requires the addition of some sort of bicycle facility. Each time a road is fully reconstructed. Okay, so what that means is it's excluding, routine maintenance that includes up until a mill and inlay. So the way that the state defines this is this phrase right here, full depth pavement work. Full depth pavement work means you're not just peeling the pavement off and putting it back, but you're actually gonna go further than that. Widening would also count for that as well. So in the case of River Street, where we all know we have this 100-year-old concrete road underneath it that we need to get out to mitigate, to actually get a product that lasts and doesn't just immediately reflect the cracking below it that's occurring in that concrete mat. That qualifies it as a full depth reconstruction. So, if you follow this, flow chart, which applies to ODOT facilities, county facilities, and any incorporated city facility, you will eventually get down to that point where we look at what is the nature of the project. It is a full depth reconstruction project. There are not currently existing bicycle facilities on river. Therefore, whatever we do within the context of this project must create some sort of facility as defined by ODOT and the state code for bicycles. So that is how you get to that point. And again, this is something that can be shared. This is one of their basically resources within their roadway design manual. One note that was brought up kind of early on was asking if the existing sidewalks qualify as a bicycle facility. So I want to just point this out. I'm not sure if anyone in this room was the one that asked that, but it has been asked. ODOT does define basically 3 different tiers of bicycle facilities that start at a minimum from a sharrow, which is just the stripes you see in lanes where bicycles would guide with traffic, all the way up to what is called a tier 1 facility, which is something like a multi-use path, a protected bike lane that's actually separated from traffic, or a 2-way protected bike area, kind of like what was presented in option 2. So there's a range of what these facilities can be to satisfy ORS 336514. The existing sidewalks do not qualify as a shared use path, which is what it would need to be for bikes because they are too narrow. So the appendix L, I believe, of the highway design manual for the state of Oregon specifies design parameters for shared use paths, which is a minimum of 8 foot of width to satisfy that condition. That is where it's considered appropriate, and this is defined by the state of Oregon, considered contextually appropriate to have both bicycles and pedestrians together. So because the existing sidewalks are less than 8 feet wide, that does not count as a shared use path. Therefore, it doesn't correct the condition of having an existing bicycle facility. So, any questions on that part before I move to an example?
Yeah, I got a question. So I read the bill and it says bikeways need to be included in all new or rebuilt roads using at least 1% of state highway funds. I mean, are we using any highway funds? I mean, if we're not using highway funds, do we need to follow this bill?
So the way this has been interpreted when this question has been asked is basically this first sentence here, which is any agency with jurisdiction over public right of way. So you're right, there's a question there, but this has been asked in the context of other projects and it has resulted in needing to meet this statute. So there's some precedent there. Ted, it's something you could go down the path of investigating further, but there is examples of other projects. And
Who was the question asked to when it was asked?
So
You said the question was brought up before. Who was it asked to? Was it the city of Newburgh or higher?
no, this is at the state level.
That's the level.
Well,
And I could ask the city attorney to work up a white paper on precedent statewide for other cities connected to this, if you would like me to spend the dollars.
Can I read a couple of the not required substatements that are in here? Because I don't think they show up in the which is kind of surprising. So
There's also exceptions too,
yeah, that's,
that, I mean, I read. On the bill,
that's what I'm gonna read.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah,
So
so
you referenced in the same ORS.
yeah, I'm
So this
referencing,
is the 35, because
yeah,
there might, I don't know if there's different ORSs that might be.
ORS 3665504. I'm just gonna read direct from it. It says, covers item 1, which is the out of the funds received by the Department of Transportation or any county or city from state highway fund. And then it says, footpaths and trails are not required to be established under subsection 1 of the section in 3 cases. Where establishment of such paths and trails would be contrary to public safety, probably the case for us. If the cost of establishing such paths and trails would be excessively disproportionate to the need or public use, which is probably not true. But the third one, where sparsity of population, other available ways or other factors indicating the absence of any need for such paths and trails. So River was selected as a main bike path route, it sounds like. And that therefore is the reason this is being applied, and that's not an exception. Is that accurate?
That actually ties all the way back to the collective piece where it is the
Okay.
connector between the two nodes of downtown. What, again, when it was established, the mill was there. So that would be why River, the context of that is that. Now, to just build on your point a bit, you will see in other communities, things called bikeways or greenways.
Yeah.
I reference the ones that are in Bend, Oregon, a lot of, if you're familiar from there, they have an entire system called a low stress network. Which takes bikes and moves them on adjacent ways, so that would be an example of what you're talking about, what other accommodations are.
Yeah, the master plan has, I forget which street it is, west of River as a secondary path to the mill. You guys probably know where than I do, but it's,
Winooski.
is it, no, what, west is to the east. to the
Really
west.
only college.
Would it be, I think it is college, yeah. So it's,
Well, and before the bypass was there, Winooski may have actually still provided a more direct.
yeah, that might be true, but I think, both college and River are in effect redundant in terms of access to the mill, so. The mill site.
Was that discussed? Having, instead of putting bike paths down river, like putting onto an adjacent street, like, did you guys have those conversations? I'd just be curious as to what were the, reasonings that you decided yes or no to something like that?
There were, of course, given the depth of committee meetings, there were hundreds of hours of discussions in each of these processes that led to these eventual decisions that are in these documents. So, I mean, it would be foolish for any one human to try to summarize all of that weight of work in just a simple statement. I think, but let me just speak as a Newburgh resident for a moment. I think if you consider the journey that you're on as you're traveling through the couplet and you're coming to that left-hand turn as you're coming through town, the first of those major downtown connectors that you reach is River Street. And then, of course, it goes past the Hoover Museum and it goes past the park. So logically, although other streets were identified for bicycle improvements, it seems very rational, given the future riverfront developments, that you would want to see, of course, bicycle improvements on this street. That, that's.
Yeah, I was just curious because you guys have had a lot of time to talk about all these things. All these things are new to us. So as we start to consider and think, I know me and my neighbors have had conversations, oh, this would be a great idea. What if it went around this way? So, I mean, I feel like you guys have an opportunity also to address those things to us specifically, if you remember any of the conversations you've had or reasons why it would be, not, maybe things that we haven't thought of, that it would be, not prudent to bring it down a different street. So that's why I'm asking that.
Yeah, from college, because college doesn't go from First Street directly to the river. There's a break when you get to Edwards. So, if you're in a car and you wanted to get to the river, you wouldn't drive down College. And a bicyclist would make the same choice. They wouldn't want to go 2 blocks, well, 2, 3, 4. They wouldn't want to go several blocks out of their way to get to something when there's a direct route.
Yeah, well, I'm a cyclist and I would actually.
Yeah, I've biked the Oregon Coast 5 times and there's a route that's nowhere near 101 for half of it, so I think that's not
Yeah,
necessarily.
but I think most people that aren't bicyclists that just are in town wanting to cruise around, they're not gonna, they're
That's
not
fair.
gonna do that.
Yeah, so there is data on this type of thing about who's gonna, it's kind of a bell curve, so the lowest experienced cyclists will stay on the most direct route. A lot of folks that do ride bikes, but maybe aren't as confident as riding in traffic, will do what you're talking about and utilize the block over. And very confident cyclists will actually ride in the lane with traffic, so it is it's kind of a bell curve spectrum of that distribution. You have something like a low stress network where you're trying to move folks off of a main road.
I wonder if maybe, so I think maybe we could talk about like design in the next meeting. I wonder if like wayfinding becomes part of that conversation, or what's feasible, not feasible.
Yeah, so in this, I don't wanna get stuck on this too much, but just one more thing to add. There are examples of this all over the state of Oregon. Wayfinding becomes incredibly important. A lot of kind of reinforcement and community buy-in becomes really important, like the soft side of getting people to utilize it, knowing it's there and actually making the side road easier for cyclists to go down. So you actually end up doing improvements on the side road. Now, those are typically less onerous. You can do it more cheaply, paint, signage, things like that. So there is examples from like the most extreme version you can find in downtown Portland down to something simpler. Which would do what you're talking about. Just one more piece of context on the design piece of those three that were created. That was a 10% design, and you keep hearing this word 10%. In engineering world, that's like we barely started. So the intent is to lay something out on paper, show the maximum impacts, which is not where you end up, right? But show the maximum impacts to citizens so that we get that feedback before you're down the road. Because you'll end up with something like an Elliott Road situation if you don't do it that way, right? So 10%, and I just want to level set there, decisions to not be made, and the whole purpose of 10% is exactly to get here. Now, could we have gotten here more efficiently? Probably, but this is the first time Newburgh is doing something like this, right? So there's not precedent for how the city does this, but this is kind of setting that. So we are kind of where we should be, even though it might feel a bit bumpy to get there, because this is the first time the city is doing it like this, for this type of community outreach for a roadway project.
Can I ask one more question on the usability of river, aside from bike stuff? I think maybe it'd be helpful to understand the context of, I'm coming from, I don't know, Sherwood. And I'm going towards Newburgh and I want to see the new downtown Mill District. Is that the primary thing we're talking about in terms of improving the usability aside from biking? Is it that connectivity between downtown and the mill site when it gets developed? Is that what we're envisioning?
Once you get this house.
I don't know who that should go to, but I think you know what I'm getting at.
Let me just start real quick. So this comes back to defining what a complete street means in the city of Newburgh. Okay, so complete streets could still put more focus on cars and getting traffic through, or complete streets can go the more extreme and make it hard for traffic to get through, right? And make it more of a community asset, if that's what the community decides to define it as. It's a gray definition, so like this committee needs to basically get there, like what are we gonna define as a community improved street, that phrase, sorry, I'm messing the phrase up, the phrase that Jerry said at the beginning. That there is no black and white answer to that question, it's specific to the communities. Okay.
I guess the only thing I would say is that I have dreamed of a world where one day Newburgh has both a lot of family wage jobs at the mill site to really anchor our economy the way it used to be, and also has a lot of recreation and opportunities along the riverfront to make it a really enviable place on the riverfront, because our riverfront is not properly utilized. So as I imagine that context, I see this as one element of that overall dream of how the city could be, and pull back from the risk of becoming a bedroom community, which we're very much in danger of right now since the mill site closed, and become a more balanced economy for everyone that lives here.
think how do we leverage that with the livability aspect too? So are there ways we can do that with some traffic calming?
It kind of sounds like it might be helpful to have presentation or report, something from Nura. Because I don't know what their vision is, I look quickly through some of their minutes of their meetings, but I don't really know what their vision is. My wife was on the Riverfront Master Planning, a good friend of mine was the chair of that committee. My wife was on city council in 2012 to 2016, and a lot of this was underway. So this is something, I've been involved in for a long time, but I couldn't really put into words what Nura is doing and envisioning.
I think the best way to do that, honestly, we would have to bring in planning staff. And we would have to spend some time really dwelling with Nura and with why those areas were chosen. Now, unfortunately, the planning director who was there then, which was slightly before my time, he has retired already, which is a problem you meet. But I'm sure I could get planning staff to come and give us an evening just about Nura. My strongest part about Nura that I know about is just the pledge, as it were, that we, to the other taxing districts, got this pledge from them that we could use their property taxes and that it would be building up in this fund that we could utilize. And I also know from reading the Nura document that a variety of areas were chosen either because they were industrially blighted or because they were connections necessary to empower those industrial blighted areas, or because they were part of the traditional downtown that had undersized water pipes and things that were structural. So everything that's, I'll say this, and I still need to, I feel I need to bring a planner in, but I will say the projects that were in the Nura list, there was none of the gilded fountains that you see in other cities. Everything that's in the Nura list is things that structurally need to be addressed, like a railway crossing if the railway reactivated, if the right kind of business went into the mill site, for example. So, but perhaps we should bring one of our planning staff in to give us an overview. What do you think, Jim?
I think that would be a distraction from the real task that we have before us. We should stay focused on River Street and how to make it better, not how River Street got to be the way it is or got first on the selection list. The street is in horrible shape and we should stay focused on that task. What are we going to do about River Street? What's the best design? And not get distracted by the other historical things, because everybody that drives down River Street knows that street needs to be good, and that's just that simple.
I mean, I guess for me, and from what I've heard from my neighbors is, their main concern is taking, part of their front yard. And if we've got a choice, and if there's any way that, a design reduces taking the front yard and then improve on the street, that might be something that my neighbors and me would be more agreed on any of these plans, because all these plans are taking a lot of front yard, I think.
So Ted, you teed up on that slide perfectly there. So this was the second topic I wanted to just cover for everybody, which is the difference between right of way and the impacts of a project. So right of way, the only reason it's not called a lot is because it's not square, right? So right of way just means linear area that a municipality owns. So in this is just a snip from one of the plans. The right of way where many of your yards are at is set back in this case. So that 80-foot number that kept coming up over and over again, That's just what was platted back over 100 years ago when this community was subdivided. A project will not necessarily cut along the right of way line. In fact, we try to minimize that. And these are all the details you work at between 10% and 90, or sorry, 10% and 100%. The goal is always to minimize impacts. So typically, and this is helpful for everyone to understand when you're selecting an option. Typically, the back of your improvement, which is improvement is defined as just the area that's being updated. You typically need about a 2-foot buffer behind that for constructability. So if you assume the sidewalks are the back of the improvement, a contractor's typically gonna want at least 2 feet to set forms, tie slopes back, pour concrete, and do all of that. So in most conditions, the impacts of the project are usually limited to about 2 feet behind whatever the back of your new sidewalk is. Does that make sense? There are very few situations where you would need to impact this space in between, and a good design takes into account staying out of that as frequently as absolutely possible. Now, go ahead.
So if we said, so like, have that in mind, if we said, I'm not setting rules, that's what we look. 57 feet. That's our, could all three of those plans be skinny down into 57 feet?
So there are, not all three of them, but within any of them, there is a bit of flexibility to do things like meandering walks, and pulling those in, particularly mid-block. The biggest challenge that you have, and not just these three, but with any sort of new reconstruction, is at the intersections. So there are ADA requirements that must be met at every single intersection, and there is absolutely zero room for not meeting those in the state of Oregon. There's been a lawsuit at the state level, and then also at the city level, in the city of Bend, that mandates this. So typically, your most significant impacts tend to happen at the intersections because of the ADA requirements, which are pushing. But you basically just can't really work with them. Once you get away from the intersections, you have the ability to meander sidewalks or things like that, suck that section back in and keep it closer to similar of how it is now. Keeping the road the same width, that kind of like 22-ish feet, and it does vary a bit, is a good step in the right direction. And then you kind of, again, once you get away from the intersections, you try to bring that sidewalk in to avoid all of the area where the yards are built out. So I can't say in a blanket statement, every single part won't have impacts that stretch beyond like back of walk to back of walk. But in the middle of the blocks, you have the opportunities to do that a lot more consistently. Last thing I would add to that, again, at a 10% level, engineers can design just about anything as long as they understand the parameters. So if one of the things that comes out of this committee is 56 feet back to back is the limit, then you go back and you start adjusting things to do that. And then you point out the places where that can't happen. You have to have those conversations. But kind of setting those parameters are definitely something that is key in understanding how to modify kind of any of the three concepts, or even create a fourth, based on the feedback you're getting, to reach a point where you all feel better about the potential impacts in the areas where yards are built into the right of way, which is in most situations along the frontage.
Is there hard requirements on widths, like travel lane, cycle, sidewalk?
Yeah, that's a good question. So kind of rules of thumb, you have precedent on this road already of about a 22-foot road. So the city's adopted section, which is alternate one, would ask us to widen that, but we're doing this to kind of all agree we need to come up with something different, right? So with a precedent of 22 feet, you can kind of stick there as your starting point for the width of the pavement, because that's what's there. Bike lanes in the state of Oregon, the bicycle design guide recommends an absolute minimum width of 5 feet unless there's other conditions that will prevent you from doing that. And then sidewalks, 5 feet is also your rule of thumb. They like to see 6, so 2 wheelchairs can pass each other, but you can still do that at a 5-foot width. So and that's set by something called ProAg, which is at the federal level, which sets the standards for ADA compliance along right of ways, essentially.
You said the multi-use path is 3 foot minimum?
So, yeah, 8 foot minimum is the bare minimum in the state of Oregon, and you have to justify that it's a low use area, and there's a whole table for how to define that. If it is not considered a low use area, then 10 is typically what you see. But 8 would be the bare minimum with justification for something to be considered a shared use path. It's the same thing as a multi-use path, the state just defines it as you'll see SUP and MUP used interchangeably.
Separation requirements for either sidewalk, bike lane, or multi-use path in terms of off the lane, is there a hard requirement there?
Your minimum is what you see in a roadside bike lane, which is basically the width of a fog line.
Okay.
Right? Sidewalks can be curb tight, but you need to consider if that is livable. It creates a lot more stress on the users on the sidewalks when you're walking right next to cars. So the city's current code doesn't even give an option for curb tight. It says it needs to be set back. I don't know if it's 5 or 6, but it calls for separated sidewalks. But you need to consider, if you wanted to go all the way up and put it on the back of the curb, which you can, it exists all over the place. What impacts does that have on your complete street, right? And you guys don't have that condition right now. I think you do at your house, up on 30, but the rest of the section has park strip in between.
Yeah, we still have first strip, it's not very wide, it's where the power poles are, but.
Right.
Yeah.
So did I hear you right? Did you say that you can have the sidewalk but right up against the curb of the street?
There's nothing in law that would say you can't do that, but it reduces the usability for the.
Could you though have a multimodal path that abuts directly against the street
Yeah, there's nothing that would prevent you from doing that within state statute or law.
to
Now, the power poles will create a challenge if you were to try to multi-use path up against it. The transmission lines, I can't stress this enough. We do not want to choose an option that requires us to move those. There is so much cost that could be spent so much better from this pot of money in moving poles 5 to 7 feet. There is so much impacts to all of your street as PG comes down and takes forever to move these poles. You have disruptions where poles have moved before the rest of the improvements have been installed. We are at the mercy of PG's crews and designers to do that. And we've been told it can take up to a year to design it, and then they have to bring in crews to build it. I mean, you could be 2 years out before you're doing any meaningful work. With the state of inflation, the costs not only affect that, but it balloons the whole project. So, and the last thing is kind of the equitable distribution of impacts. If we start moving poles over only on the east side, that only affects the east side, right? So I can't stress enough the importance of trying to find a way to work around those to get this project done in a fiscally responsible way and in a timeline that is reasonable for both budgets, but also for the impacts to all of your lives that would happen if we try to move those poles.
Am I correct in assuming that the high voltage poles are on the east side, that
They are.
have you guys done a study for moving the multi-use path for design 3, which is, I assume is the preferred design? That's kind of the gist I've got so far. Moving it over to the west side and then making the planter strips smaller, seems like it would reduce the footprint. Pretty exponentially.
Up to this point, we haven't. It's a good idea, and something that should be considered. The primary reason why it was originally put on that side, was for future tie-ins with, there's the path that comes from exactly. And that's actually part of a greater trail system, which there's a master plan that isn't the cities, but it's kind of at the county level of how the kind of pathway interconnects the whole trail system in the area. So that's why it started over there. You can cross roads and like you can still do it, but that was kind of, again, at the 10% level, you look at that and say, try to tie it in as smoothly as you can. But no, it's something looked at for sure.
which is under no circumstances to say that if something like that were the recommendation of the group, that we couldn't figure out somewhere further south the solution to getting bicyclists across to tie in with other things, riverfront, etc. And that we could, that if that was the recommendation when we finished go through everything, that's an option that we can definitely look at as a design option. In other words, this is an authentic process, not a fake one.
Sarah, what determines how the width of, you call it park strip?
Park strip or grass strip, yeah, the landscape strip is
Yeah.
a job.
What determines like how wide that has to be, or, you know, that can be?
Yeah, so there's, again, if we were sticking straight to the city code, there is a minimum, which I think is 5 feet. I'll need to verify that. But again, we're doing this committee with the understanding that we're gonna have something that is slightly different than city code is currently adopted. The reason, outside of the livability considerations for pedestrians having, feeling like they're further away from traffic. I mean, the further you can get them away, the better they feel. So that's kind of a rule of thumb. State of Oregon has requirements for, how we treat stormwater before it leaves the project area and heads somewhere else to a discharge point. So you typically need to make accommodation for some sort of area for localized treatment. And the most common place to do that is in those planter strips. So you can kind of have an area for treatment here and then have a normal, maybe a tree and a grass strip and then another area. And so it kind of all blends together, right? And typically for those type of facilities, you want at least 5 feet to build them. So that's kind of the rule of thumb. Now, going all the way back, there's ways to do things underground. You could store things in pipes. There's like, when you see curb tight sidewalks that are butted right up to the curb. Typically, all of that happens underground for treatment, but there's negatives to that. There's cost, there's a lot of pipe in the ground to store. Things like that. So, it's more of a rule of thumb. There's not a specific rule. If you went to the Newburgh's city code and followed that rule of thumb only, I believe it's 5 feet, but again, we'll verify it to for sure.
Who approves going around the code for design purposes? If we do recommend something like that, is that like?
So my understanding is that because this is a capital project, you have the ability to,
Okay.
as long
That's
as
right.
there's input and it's not just, yeah, that's the.
So if design recommendations came from the group that were variant to those that are in the TSP standard examples, then because this is a capital improvement project, it gives the city the ability to do unusual designs in a way that a standard new housing estate, it would just roll out and follow the standard blueprint.
And also just for an example of a road that's stuck purely to city code and didn't even try to do anything unique, it's Ellie Road. So that used the currently adopted section to do that. Now they try to get creative with the bike lanes that do all kinds of stuff over on that road, right? But that is the city's adopted typical. So if you wanted an example of what that could look like.
And it's a matter of public record that when I arrived as city manager, I was horrified by what was happening on Elliott Road and by the fact that we hadn't done proper public engagement. And we hadn't considered other designs. And I did battle, but it was too late when I became the city manager to stop that project. And because the money was already out the door, a lot of it. And so when we started to look at this, once enough tax increment financing had collected, I said, no, we're not going to just Elliott Road this. We're going to work up some different possible designs. And we're going to engage with people and show them designs. Even before we make any actual blueprints, we're going to do this process. So the point of this exercise from the very beginning was not to have it be or feel like an Elliott Road choo-choo train.
I'll personally piggyback on that. I agree 100%. And my biggest beef with Elliott Road is it doesn't look like it belongs in being a different city, you know. It just doesn't fit the character of our town. And that's one of my hopes is that this project fits the character of our town.
On LA Road specifically, there's some key decisions that were made that speak to what you're talking about, Bob, like the bright green bike lanes are not something that has to be done. That's something you see in Portland a lot, but you go to Central Oregon, you'll see them in red lava rock color, so it matches kind of your surroundings. And in Newburgh, that could be something different. That area just has to look different, right, from the pavement. So also kind of how it just kind of it meanders, does all kinds of funky stuff. Those are the things that you you don't notice it when it's on a piece of paper, but when it gets built, it looks out of place. So taking those considerations in during this process is really important to get exactly what you're saying, a road that looks like it belongs in the city and matches the kid.
And can we go back to, where you were saying that we can look into the requirement of the bike lane for any of these plans to see if that's something that we need to do? Or,
The requirement to add some bike facilities.
Yeah.
That has been tested in court. I don't believe that there's any way
of
that you
what
could
you want,
remove that, but also I would say, why would you want to? Like, why would you want to make it that people can bike?
right?
Now I would say how that happens, what possible design is looked at, or what options we've all the room in the world to think of options.
Yeah.
But we have to think about every kind of road you're.
I think the main, Bob brought it up, but it's like the character being preserved is gonna be challenging with bare minimum. I'm trying to add these numbers together in the most efficient way possible. You have 22 feet plus maybe a 10-foot multi-use path and a sidewalk on the other side and a 5-foot strip. So whatever width that is, trying to make it work where you don't have to basically tear up everything that's there is gonna be the challenge, right? It's gonna tear up. Yeah. They're concerned about trees, right? It's gonna be really hard to make this work without trees coming down. I think there was an open item on whether the trees were actually end of life or not. We were digging into more at some point maybe, but.
What you're saying is true.
Yeah, so I mean, like, that's what's at risk with why I had brought it up is the identity of the street is gonna change drastically.
Yeah.
And so, that's why discussing about what Bureau funding is all about, the ORS 36504 and those details we covered a little bit already. I think that's why people are asking is like, and the other part for me is if the riverfront area, you're trying to figure out how to service it, not just from a biking perspective, but from a commuting perspective. There's Winooski that comes in near that area. And then River Street. So that's why I asked, who's the user we're trying to help long-term? Is it someone from the north end of Newburgh? Is it someone from another town? And that, I know you, Jim, didn't want to get into it. You wanted to test the River Street alone, which I get, but what are you trying to accomplish or what are we trying to accomplish is part of the picture of it, so.
I would say that what we're really trying to accomplish is a balancing act.
Yeah.
Between all of these things. And it's super hard. And I understand how people feel. If we're talking about Doris Drive and Second Street. And we were talking about the pine trees right behind my fence. I would feel feelings about that and they would be justified. So I get it.
Yeah.
So really, my hope is that we can come eventually to some kind of compromise that we can all live with, get behind.
I think that's where we have some flexibility, so I wouldn't say that option 3 is the preferred, I think it is one of the options. I received a community member drawing recently that we had some really great conversation about it, so, but I think that's a really great example of creative thinking and how can we take the things that we like and be creative about the things that we like. DJ volunteered to take us all on a walk with some spray paint so we could look at things. But I think actually really feel out, like, how do we honor what a community-oriented complete street might look like? I hope that it's not lime green. You and I will have this conversation about not lime green.
Would you want that lime green repainted? Cause that's awful, that stuff.
My personal take on the green paint, I don't feel like paint makes me safer as a bicyclist. And so I don't see it as a good use of city money. And it's there, so repainting it
There's an even worse use of
It's
it.
even worse use. My personal opinion.
Ready to be.
When it's time for grinding inlay. Got it. Duly noted.
A quick thought, since we're talking about biking a little bit, I like where you're going, Jacob, with trying to really understand what's happening at a larger level. And I think that's important, that River Street, or other streets, it fits into the larger picture of what's happening here. Otherwise, you get stuck with like Elliott that has decent bike infrastructure. I don't like it very much. I talked to the engineer. I was moving in as that was, well, not, I moved in maybe a couple years before, but got involved and had a lot of questions about all these different curb cuts and weird elevations. But it ends right there at 99, and it's great if you live on Elliott and go to the high school. But otherwise, it's not well connected. I think we have to be thinking more holistically about the connections. I think we can do that, but we have to look a little bit beyond just River Street. And I think maybe that's where some of the, like, what's happening in the larger transportation picture of coming off Dundee bypass onto River Street or another adjacent street into downtown. Okay, that gets you to downtown. How do you get east and west? And I think those are important to consider as we look at the, it doesn't get into the design, but it gets into why River Street or why College or Shea.
Sure, nice idea.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone here has actually read the transportation system plan. It is really, it's easy to find on the city website. And it answers all of those questions. And the River Street plan was incorporated into the transportation system plan in, I think it's 2018. So it's sort of like one-stop shopping for all your questions. You can see the transportation system plan with all the bike paths and all the disconnects and everything in the whole city. And simultaneously, you can also see how the River Street plan fits in with it. And it actually has some sectional views, the design views of River Street, the concept that we're talking about right now. And by the way, that what's in there looks a great deal like option one, but they weren't thinking about money so much then. They were just thinking about what they want. And probably that plan envisioned undergrounding all those lines and stuff, which is not practical today. But anyway, please.
Not possible, we asked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is not possible. This is from PG. They will not underground transmission lines to a neighborhood, so they have to stay up.
But please do pull up the
We asked them and that was a
transportation
hard no.
plan and read it. It'll answer all those questions. They actually do a pretty good job on it. The graphics are excellent and it's only 300 pages long.
I think to that point, I wonder, maybe we don't need to go kind of like fully into the neuro weeds, but maybe highlighting this section of town and having someone from planning come and talk about.
Sure, I can set that up for the next meeting. I can have one of our planners present River Street in the context of the newer plan.
But neuro is basically nothing more than a funding mechanism to improve things for the whole south side of town. I mean, that's all of us set up for. And within that, though, you have different things that you're gonna be working on and replacing, all the infrastructure and improving roads, so I kind of feel like for us to bring somebody in, talk about Nura, it's kind of a waste of time, because it's just the funding mechanism. That's all it is. It doesn't do anything else. It's just the funding mechanism. Everybody's giving a piece of their property taxes so that we can pull it all together and be able to fix the south side of town, infrastructure, roads, everything, because otherwise we don't have the money. And so it's not, everybody is giving all their property taxes. It's just a piece. So unless I'm missing something, I just feel like. Guys, we're getting off into something that. It's gonna take time away from really, what is the purpose of trying to come up with a decent design that doesn't take so much. People's property, cause that's what I want, I just want the least amount of impact. Get the road fixed because it's a mess, and it's a main road, it's not just for your neighborhoods. Unfortunately, it's for the whole town because you've got Memorial Day, boat races, and there's a ton of people coming up and down the road. All during summer, people are going up and down the road pulling their boats, so how do we come up with a plan that takes least amount of impact to the neighborhood and looks good and accomplishes the fact that we need a better road?
I'll have to double check. I feel like I looked up one of the NERA minutes from like last June. And they were discussing whether to start the River Street project, the south or south to north. And that feels like more than just a funding source. That feels like, making decisions about how things are gonna get developed, which is kind of where I was coming at, wanting to know more about what their vision is for how things are gonna proceed.
Well, I was in those minutes and in those meetings, should I say? And in those meetings, the discussion was around what would be the practical pathway for construction. And, north to south, south to north. And while they did choose a direction, there was a fair bit of debate about that. There was pros and cons both ways on doing a southern section versus a northern section. Nobody felt that the whole of the road should be tackled all at once, even though that's the most cost-effective approach, because that would cause the most disruption, because all the blocks would get shut down at one time. So that's just some context to those discussions.
Be mindful of time, it's 6:48.
Okay.
To public comments.
Would you like to move into public comment?
How much do you think we need for the land service? Because I'm curious about if we started like the land service.
Shot context of doing a survey.
If we talked about like larger system design, started those conversations next.
Yes, some correspondence from River Street asked if survey could be done. But prior to doing any designs, actually design work. And I checked with engineers, and the answer is that survey could be done at any point. So the land survey could occur prior to building design criteria and then doing the design. So that could kick off. How long a survey would take, I don't know.
Yeah, so it would take quite a while, because this is not a simple survey. There's tons of, not just boundary to figure out, you're finding property lines that were established over 100 years ago. All of that takes quite a bit of time, but also just the physical field work to survey everything, because it does go back into where people have built their yards into. So I'm not a surveyor, and to get an exact answer, we would need to go down that path. But I would say, like, to have it, I don't know that if we had them go tomorrow, it would definitely be ready by the next ad hoc meeting, but potentially maybe the one after that. But again, we need to confirm. I also would say we're in the busy season now. Surveyors are very, very busy.
I did reach out on that.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, it'd be 2 months minimum just from notice to proceed to get everything processed back to us.
And for some context too, the line work that is in these concepts is based off of the city's existing GIS data, which is typically within 1 to 2 feet of where the boundary actually is at. And that is typical at a 10% level. And if you spend the money to do the survey, the only way that money is wasted is if the project doesn't happen. At any point, that data that is collected can be utilized in a design. So the only way it would not have a value back to the taxpayers if the project just didn't happen. It's no design.
And truthfully, this is the normal process too. We would do a 10% design utilizing something like GIS, and then immediately move into survey before we do anything more. So
So a typical next milestone would oftentimes be 30% if you have a high level of confidence in the concept you're proceeding with. You would do survey and then do a 30% design, which is just plan view, but much more dialed in, right, than what you're seeing at this 10% level. Some projects that need another step between that point and 10% will do like a 15 or 20, which is a checkpoint where you've probably done the survey, but maybe you haven't gone to the level of detail you would have. So those are just for how projects like this typically develop. Those are the steps you would typically see if you were looking down the road. Where would we go?
What would the ballpark, and of course, I'm not gonna hold you to this, what would the ballpark price be for a survey?
It's about 50,000 roughly.
So let me add one small note of caution, just because it's my job to say these things. If we spend the $50,000 and we take it from the blend of SDC and Neura money, and then later we do not do the project, then I am in a difficult legal position. Just to register that with you.
Can you transfer funds after the fact, and fund it from a different source?
With a supplemental budget exercise, yes. Assuming there are sufficient transportation dollars available at this time. State pass-throughs have been very meager for regular transportation dollars lately.
So it'd be only if we pick option 4. What's 4, the option 4,
Yeah,
which is the do nothing option, then this becomes a problem.
If option 4 occurred and it was $50,000, then that would mean that some other southern part of town would lose 12 ramps. 12 ADA ramps. Maybe $8,000 a ramp.
So I guess I'm not understanding why we need to do the survey.
It would just increase the level of confidence on the impacts that could happen to the properties. So again, rule of thumb is about 1 to 2 feet of accuracy with GIS, but that's a rule of thumb. So there could be areas where it's not as accurate. So that would be the reason. And you could go out, Jerry mentioned, I talked about.
I mean, if I'm looking at this, if I'm looking at the plans and I measure it myself from the middle of the street to what the measurements are, I mean, that's pretty much what it is. I mean, the survey is just gonna say, oh,
It's confirmed. That's what it would do.
So, but you normally kick off the survey as part of a project, or that's not always mandatory?
You would typically do a survey after the concept phase.
Right, so where we're at would be the trigger point for a survey regardless.
Typically, the trigger point would be, we've chosen the concept, now it's time to do a survey. So we would be just like one little step ahead.
it's gonna be a problem if we don't do, I mean, if we do the survey, it's gonna be a problem if we don't actually pick one of these plans.
Yeah.
So we should just pick the plan first and then do the survey.
And you're right, Ted, you can generally say the center line of the road is pretty
Yeah.
close to where the middle is, and then it goes 40 feet
Yeah.
each direction. And you can do what Jerry mentioned, we can go out and actually put
Yeah.
paint in the road and do all of that, and you can have a pretty high level of confidence in it.
Save $50,000.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I would rather save the money.
I don't think it's saving money. is
It's
it?
not saving
It's not saving
money.
money.
I mean, you're gonna spend it
Right.
anyway, when we pick a plan.
It's about
Right.
when you choose to spend the money.
Right.
I will say, because we're in a grid, in the old platted grid, there is a higher level of confidence with just this GIS data versus if we were like out on Elliott where the lots changed a lot. So I have a relatively high level of confidence compared to other situations that the GIS data is close.
I think for the people that live on River Street, there's some level of confidence or assurance that you get from doing that, even if it's a checkbox to say, yes, the GIS matches the actual data. So, I mean, if you have to do it anyway, I know there's a slim chance of option 4 is still on the table, but it seems like that's.
Yeah, I think what you summarized there is the value of doing it. So if the group were to decide that's what that value is enough, then yeah.
Cool.
Only gonna cost more later, right, with inflation, so.
Everything always costs more later. Everything always costs more later.
And just so I'm clear, like, even if there wasn't all this public input and scrutiny, you'd still be doing a survey at
So
a project like this?
When we did that first open house, if we had everyone had saw say option 3 and said, let's do it, we would have, next step would have been to order the survey at that point.
So it's not an additional cost that wasn't planned.
It's just about when you spend the money, if, as long as the project happens in any capacity.
But and this isn't a let's not spend the money. If the project then does not go ahead, I've just created a magic black hole in our budget that I need to go figure out how to fill from somewhere.
And I think it delays the project, as you said, it's gonna be about 2 months to. So, I mean. To me, it's. Better if we pick a plan first. And then. If the plan requires a survey, then do the survey.
All plans will require a survey, anything moving forward.
Well, no, I mean, number 4,
Right, nothing requires nothing. Right?
yes.
Good.
I saw you with your phone.
Well, I think he just answered it. I mean, I was just. It doesn't, is it a state law that says we have to do a survey? Cause it seems like if we came to a consensus and we picked a plan. Maybe something that's different than the 3 that was already been talked about, we come up with something else. Why, and everybody feels good about it, or as good as you can feel about it. Why do we have to spend $50,000 to do a survey?
You cannot design a project without a survey.
Really, as like a state
Yes.
requirement or something?
Well,
No, it's
just quite
physical
literally,
reality.
in the profession, because when we build plans. The survey is the first file we get to build everything off of, because you gotta think about every single side road has to be tied into, every existing curve has to be tied into. Every single manhole has to be adjusted vertically for the new profile, so there's no way to do it.
For instance, if we took that plan and designed off of that, we would end up with so many change orders, it would be.
Yeah,
Great.
and so Mike, the one place you'll see a survey not used is for like overlays, so you just do that with an aerial. But when you're talking about a full reconstruct like this, it's absolutely non-negotiable, you have to do it.
Also, Third and River, there's not right of way discussions, it's more actual property discussions involved, because it's 60 feet wide at that point, not 80, so it's. The survey, I think, is very important for that block in particular.
So I wanna understand, Will, what your statement you made. When you said something about there would be a black hole in our budget, I mean, if we have to do it, we have to do it. Were we not already kind of thinking that we had to do this anyways?
Black hole only comes if we.
Only if we don't do anything,
Yes.
because we spend the money, but we don't do anything. Well, that would never happen as long as I'm on the council.
Well, sorry, option 4 is not do nothing, it's fix the road with an inlet, right?
So if we do a grinded inlet, we don't have to spend that $50,000.
So
Right.
can I speak on that topic? It hasn't come up yet. So a grinded inlay would replace your pavement. It will still trigger the requirement to bring ADA ramps up to car standards on every single corner. And that is, even with a grinded inlay, you will get impacts to the trees that are on those corners.
Right, but you would need a survey for that.
Not necessarily,
Not,
you could get away without it at that point.
there are standard drawings that you can utilize to give guidelines to contractors, and basically you end up having contractor do a lot of the design.
We have FROAG diagrams that are standard ramps but it's not quite as intense.
It's not as clean as just saying we're just gonna grind it anyway, but there will still be the full cuts.
You essentially get a set of plans that just shows repave from here to here in the exact same limits, and then design this style of ramp at every corner. So that is the case where you don't need the survey.
So I have a question for you. You said 2 months. Could we like sign Newburgh's name on the list to get ourselves a date? And then in our June meeting, we look at I think we should all look at Jim's plan that he sent me, because, and then talk pros and cons for that, talk pros and cons of the 3. We all have a chance to read that 300-page document. Do we need 2 bike lanes on the road, or can we get away with 1 wider and maybe talk through planning options? And if we feel good, we continue, and if we don't feel good, we can hard abort before we have to pay the money on to save Will's black hole.
Financial point of order, we will have to do bids we're gonna have to go out and get bids for 3 companies. So,
Not that hard.
so there's a little bit more, but it's all doable.
We see Jim's plan ahead of the next meeting, is that possible? He said he wanted to bring it up as an item to discuss.
I just think it's a good idea, flexible thinking.
Yeah, I mean, just sometimes it's helpful to have people have time to look at it and share what I have it on. Pull it up.
Sure.
Yeah, see it, and then have an opportunity to think about it more.
And just a technical question on maps and looking stuff up, like, as we move forward, I'm thinking especially currently when you look at it, there's a pretty kind of low resolution drawing, but then there's higher resolution files that would take a long time to open and are really hard to access.
They sure do. They're massive.
Is there a technical way to present those that isn't in a file format that takes so long? I don't know if that's the only way to do it or not.
You could break them up like block by block. That would really be kind of your only way to do it.
Okay.
The reason they take so long to load is they are full roll plots of the entire length of the project, but that would be the way to.
You could bring printouts to a meeting.
Thank you, Jay. You have the the image is just the sectional view as well as the street.
Yeah, so I actually took a whole on built that paper, I'll hold it. Let me find it quick.
I mean, these drawings are, I mean, this one's helped me
Yeah, oh, yeah, no, they're
a
helpful.
lot.
I just wondered, like, I never even could get the other ones to open the view.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to open those,
Yeah.
but I mean, it takes me a while.
So Ted, those ones that you have there, this is for the benefit of everybody, those are pretty easy for us to make, we have a
This one?
program, yeah. The more kind of realistic ones, we have a program that we're able to kind of do that pretty efficiently, so if we have, like, we could take this and Jim and you kind of, you use Street Mix for this, Jim, is that what be the program to make this one, which is kind of more 2D, but. What I'm saying is if it's helpful to the committee to see that style that Ted was holding up, it's pretty easy for us to create that. So this is it, right? Jim?
Yeah.
Well, Jim, this is yours. Do you want to talk through it or do you want me to do it?
Okay, hold on, I'll do that. One second. Brought something that might help me.
Hey, Jim, thank you for doing this.
I know.
I confess, I love doing this kind of stuff. I'm a retired engineer.
Like, things put it out first.
Yeah, it's like, oh, boy. Okay, so. I guess first thing is you'll notice that this is 12 feet. I like 12 feet lines better than 11 feet is just a little bit small. But the most important factor about this design that everybody needs to see right away is that the bike lane is at curb grade. It's not at the street level. So it's up beyond curb tight, but off the street. And then you'll see here as the pedestrian lane is over here on the right.
It's common everywhere in the world other than.
And someone asked me, well, why is it the Tesla thing? Because when I looked at this, I said, those look like Cybertrucks to me. So I'm gonna call them Tesla, and this plan got named the Tesla plan. So anyway, I believe that, yeah, it's a little unconventional, but it has been done elsewhere. And I believe that all the power poles with this design approach will fall within the green zone there. And I've been out there and I've taped it all. And it looks to me like you could lay this right down, it'll fit right down the existing street line. All the power poles can stay where they are. And if you go up there, you can see the rest of it. I picked this particular segment from 7th to 9th because I'm most familiar with it. Stephen lives right there. And this would, by the way, preserve the chain link fence with the jasmine. But anyway, if you take this concept and extend it in both directions, I thought it fit and all the power poles were okay.
Just to clarify, Jim, so you're saying there'd be a transmission pole and then there'd be several trees and then another transmission pole, and the transmission pole would be inside that planter strip. Is that what
The
you're saying?
existing high voltage power poles, you can see them right there.
Like, so this one's going down is River Street. Oh, the river.
To the right is
River's
north,
there.
to the left is south, and up is west.
So, yeah, this same thought process I had, I wonder why it wasn't on the table.
So everything's on the table.
Well, no, I meant why, sorry, why was it not a proposed one?
So
Because
this, I can answer that.
Yeah.
This is Elliott Street if it's done the right way. So that was why it wasn't brought up. Okay, so if you go down Elliott and walk or bike it, you run into those weird double ped ramps where it crosses the bike lane and then it crosses the road, but you're supposed to stand in the bike lane and cross the road. So there's decisions that were made on that project that led us from talking with the city to not consider this, but if this is done well, and there's a lot of lessons you can take from Elliott and do this better.
Yeah.
It is a good option. The one thing I will note, yes, and I walked it as well and pulled tape on
Oh,
the
good,
power
thank you.
poles. It looks like we're good there, which is great. The trees are the challenge in that situation, because you can kind of see where they fall, like, you're still working right up against them. So I think with this option, there is an opportunity to probably reduce impact to trees. There are still gonna be some where, again, at the corners where this creates challenges. So why was it not really talked about? The scars from from Elliott, I think, kind of moved people away from it, but again, I want to reiterate, if you do it well and you take the lessons that can be learned from that project, this can be done and create a pretty good result.
it's the only one that takes use of the fact that there's 4 to 5 feet from the power pole or the existing sidewalk. And reutilizes that space as a sidewalk and minimally encroaches on the houses that are extending in the right of way.
Now, nobody said that any design feature was off the table.
Sure.
I just said the process cannot go like Elliott did.
Okay, fair.
So, and you made this comment right when this came up, this is common in other places. There's not an example of this in Newburgh, so you're talking about, does this fit in, is what we're talking about. Well, there is an example, but it's not a good example, right? I could bring in examples of where this has been utilized in other communities at the next meeting and show some examples of what that can look like. Other things to consider that do create challenges at every intersection because of kind of the double ped ramp challenge that was created in this corner, that corner. Is how do you get peds across safely, and then how do you deal with those grade changes without having something like Elliott Road? One of the potential solutions to eliminate the grade change problem is actually to do raised intersections, that actually the whole intersection comes up to the grade of the sidewalks, which functions as traffic calming in addition to bicycles. And it can kind of create a boulevard effect, which might fit in a bit better with the community.
I've never seen that. So you mean you're driving along, you come to the intersection and then there's kind of a raised hump and then you come down the other
So,
side.
and again, I can bring examples of this all over the place, but because you have a 25-mile-an-hour road, you can do that. It's common and it functions as a MUTD CD acceptable traffic calming measure, and it keeps the bike lanes pretty much flat as you go through it, so it alleviates a lot of your ADA challenges. Now, there's costs associated with that because you're typically going to want to do those intersections in concrete. You do not want to try to mill and inlay something that does that, right, in two directions. So you got to consider that element. But, and then everybody that lives on the river has to be okay with driving over grade changes at every intersection. So that is a trade-off, and there will be car-centered folks in the community that will hate that. Just want to put that out there. But that is a way to address the challenges that were kind of poorly addressed on Elliott Road when it comes to making it usable.
One question, can you pre-slope the bike lane before the intersection, so you're at grade when you get to the intersection?
Yeah, so your options are kind of either do that and or bring the whole intersection up, right? That's.
I have seen, yeah, pre-sloping, so it's not sloping right at the intersection, but before,
I think-
you still have a curve, but.
Sorry. I was gonna say, what he's saying is you wouldn't even need to pre-slope it because you would just keep right at that same grade.
Yeah, I understand, there's an alternative to not
Yeah.
having to rate the
Gotcha.
intersection.
And you could even intersperse them. You could have some that go down, some that are up. I mean, you have a lot of flexibility in ways to do that, but.
But it would be less expensive to slowly grade down the bike and then to not put the concrete in the intersections, because that sounds like $1 million.
So there's trade-offs here. If you, a concrete intersection is a fantastic option if you can put it in, because it will last for 100 years, right? So if you can afford to do that, or even do every other one, there's a lot of value in it. And when you go to re-mill and inlay the sections in between, it costs less, because you do like less of that.
Okay, I can't argue with that.
But no, your point is well taken. That does cost more, but though I will also say, with the spiking in oil prices, suddenly concrete is getting a lot closer to what the asphalt costs are. That gap isn't there as much because asphalt is raising in price. Once by the time we do this project, once that's fully filled, you're gonna be back in a situation like we were during COVID, where there were jobs that were selecting concrete over asphalt because it was only maybe 10% more expensive versus 50, like it used to be 50% more expensive. So in the context of when this project's gonna happen and some solutions that could create something that addresses the bike issues and creates more of a boulevard that might fit the community better, though that's a really good opportunity to check a bunch of boxes and make something nice out of it.
The raising part addresses one of the concerns possibly, which was speed. I mean, if it naturally makes people want to slow down, it's not the worst thing. That's one thing. I mean, I'm on Third and River and we get people flying. Once they finally hit all the bumps on Fourth and further south, make it Third. I mean, some nights I hear people going probably 50 miles an hour right there.
Particularly in your part of the road, the sheer width of
Yeah.
it makes it even worse.
Yeah, and so, yeah.
And so, but you're right, I mean, if they see a raised intersection coming up, most people are gonna start hitting this right sooner.
Yeah. My knee jerk without thinking it through very much, but just hearing this, I love the idea of the raised intersections, because I was under the impression we wouldn't be able to do speed bumps because of the major collector and all that. And so this is a way to address safety and speed.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, that's actually a good idea, because I mean, that's my street right there, and that's where kids cross going to Edwards.
Yeah.
And sometimes those cars don't slow down on that street alone. So,
Can I do a quick, I want to be very mindful of time, we're almost at 7:15, but I do want to do a quick temperature check, nobody has to commit to anything, but before I ask TJ to do some mock-ups for us for our next meeting. Yays, nays on this potential consideration of the Tesla plan, is it something that we want to investigate further?
I like this.
I like them all.
We can renew it to Caitlin.
Yes.
But I want to give Elon Much more credit. He's already.
But I think that phone is on that recording.
so what I
Oh,
I
I think this is my house right here.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said, I'm sorry.
The pole,
Yeah.
I think it's on this side,
This is 8th Street. That's the 8th Street.
on this Sixth Street.
No,
8th Street.
Oh,
it's
it's,
8th Street.
okay. Oh, okay. I thought it was just.
So what I can do first thing I can do is I can get some actual photos of projects that have done this, so we can see some visuals of what that can look like. I can do one of those 3D renderings that takes kind of what Jim did here, but make it a little bit more photorealistic. And then the most extreme option would be actually laying this thing out, but based on what I heard from Bob, I don't know if laying the whole entire section out, it provides that you can't open it.
Yeah.
Or you have to wait for 30 minutes to do that. So I would recommend we start there, some actual photos in the world where this has been done, and then some of those ones that.
Yeah, I mean, I like this.
Yeah, and I think that would give a lot of good visuals.
Could we all get an email with these images, just so we can mull over them a little bit?
Yeah, so we're gonna update the public meeting packet for transparency to include all of this, and then we can forward that. So, yeah.
It just came in too late for the production schedule.
Sure.
I mean, I'd like it posted on the website so everybody can see it, not just us.
Yeah, it'll be in the full, on the full website.
Is there any value in trying to assess if this has any impact areas as we go from Third, where does it end, Third, no, is it 9/11, where are we in?
So the intersection of Fourth down to 11th is the proposed improvement.
Not Third,
There's a transition in that block, but you wouldn't be looking at doing the same, well, as it currently stands, that's the limits. Okay, I think we could talk about that.
but is there any value in, as well as including a better view of this, if you think that there's just from a quick pass in the areas that this doesn't work for? Or would that be,
Yeah, no, I certainly, okay, and I can bring those up, if I find areas that look like they're not.
But again, I think the goal is to find a typical section, because again, there's gonna be a lot of tailoring.
I didn't
of the
mean this to
design
help
within
you,
the small
I just meant like obvious areas where you have to deviate from this plan knowingly with spending very minimal effort.
Yeah, so I
Massive effort.
I can tell you just from walking it today. There's not any that jumped out immediately,
Okay.
but the right of way does constrict between 9th and 11th. Things get narrower there on the area available. Now, this is thin enough where it shouldn't technically matter.
Also, can't the
but-
planter strip just narrow down?
Correct.
To get us through the difficult zone?
Yes, so that's the one area that I would say you would probably have a section that looked different as those last two blocks.
Yeah, it's,
So TJ, just off the top of your head, you know, where, any place that you know of already does this, that we could actually take a little field trip, not collectively, but individually, I'd love to walk that and see what that.
Off the top of my head, I don't have one yet, but I will certainly have one that I can, or have Gary share and then take that off.
So I know the picture Elliott Road and it's not.
What?
Not a good picture.
Yeah. This would be a road done well,
Yeah.
right? That would be.
So one of the big issues has been impact of any projects, that any version is gonna have on trees. With this one, and I wanna thank Jim for kind of opening up people's minds to alternatives and definitely reinforcing that there's no set. This is what the city's gonna do.
Not this time.
They're looking to ram it down anybody's throats. I appreciate that from the city and I appreciate you really coming up with a creative design. Is there any way to kind of get a better sense on what impact this will have on trees and what we might be able to minimize on trees?
So the only way to really do that is to like basically go walk river and pull a tape from the center line and see where that edge.
Okay,
Because like this tree right here that is shown with the strip line, that stump is enormous.
Yeah.
Right, so that's one where you look at it closely and say, we may have a challenge there. These smaller guys like here and here, were probably good. But on paper, that is really hard to say. If you were walking it,
Gotcha.
it's a lot easier to
Okay.
kind of get that.
Can that be done, like? From you guys or no?
Typically, we bring in an arborist.
Arborist,
At that point to actually.
Yeah.
evaluate, So
So
we don't rely on our own judgment for that either.
civil engineers are typically gonna engage with an arborist again at some point in the project to see what's realistic about being able to save and what isn't. We can design around a lot of stuff, but we're not experts on trees, right? So the best practice is certainly to engage with.
And an
someone who's-
unexpected taproot can still occur. Even if you think things are gonna be okay, I don't want folks to be lied to.
what's the depth you have to cut down for both the bike lane and the pedestrian walkway? In terms of like when you're actually excavating for it, is it?
Yeah, so this is a good question. So a typical sidewalk section, or what we would do for the bike lane, which we decided to treat like a sidewalk, you're typically gonna have. Probably about an 11-inch total section, 5 inches of concrete, over 6 inches of base material.
Okay.
Now, you would take a recommendation from the geotech to confirm that, so again, a rule of thumb there, but that's
So only roughly a foot?
for non-load bearing pieces of infrastructure, so that will be a bike lane that is separated from a road, which you can manage in this situation. Or a sidewalk. Your pavement is much cheaper, and then if you were to pursue this concrete intersection idea, it's quite a bit more of a section, but. The intersection is raising, so you're actually not going down as far in that condition.
How deep does the road get excavated in this case?
We didn't have an asphalt design in
I
that.
thought they did, I don't recall.
Let me see if I can find that, Jake.
Our
See what they're-
geotech did an evaluation of the structural stability of the ground below the roads by taking a lot of cores.
I have the geo report here, I'll just look them over talking and I can follow up.
Give us.
Yeah, when you're looking that,
Section.
maybe call for public comment. Elizabeth Todd.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you put that down.
I wonder, at the next meeting, if we could, or on the website, there could be a list of the city approved trees, replacement trees that would be acceptable in a 5-foot green belt. That would be helpful to me. Specifically, I'm looking for, what's the chance that there can be a shade canopy over the street in the next 10 years or ever? But the other thing I wanted to say is that I've been collecting signatures around town from Newburgh residents. And there are 3 things that we've been asking people to sign. Number 1 is just, what if we just choose option 4? And about 80% of the people I ask are quick to sign that. But that pales in comparison to the next 2 ones that, I'm not sure even one person has ever said no to signing. So, petition number 2. The city council needs to know what they're approving and how it will impact neighbors before they greenlight a project. All our Newburgh people say, yeah, that's the kind of city I want to live in. I want to live in a city where the city council knows what they're approving when they approve something. They're not just going to greenlight something that, could take maybe 0 or 5 feet of my yard without knowing. They're going to know when they approve something, how it's going to affect the people who live on that street. Everyone wants to sign that petition. And then the 3rd petition is, I just forgot what the 3rd petition. No, it's actually not. Hold it. Oh, yeah, this one people love too, and we've already been talking about it, and that is there should not be any taken yard space. The back-to-back of the existing sidewalks, that 58 feet, there's not one person in Newburgh I have approached that isn't quick to say, yeah, that should not change. Whatever plan that's chosen needs to respect that boundary. And so, thank you for listening.
And Carla.
Hello, so, I have a couple questions. So I noticed on the rendition, which, thank you for making that, I really liked it. Is there something in the law that talks about a bike lane on both sides for a total of 10 feet? I'm just thinking for some of those squishier areas, if we did a 5-foot bike lane instead of 2 5-foot bike lanes, it may help in some of those areas.
Yeah, so you have to provide an opportunity for 5 feet in each direction.
Okay. And it looks like some of that green space area will be going away on the plan, like it's a smaller space. I think mine is more than 6 foot right now, so it appears that part of that may go away. I'm just trying to verify.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. If you look at the plan, it says approximately 6 to 8 feet. I mean, some areas it'll be more like, it might even make 10 feet. Some areas, as TJ mentioned, it's gonna get squished down a little bit, so it might be like 4 feet, but generally speaking, it's somewhere in that 6 to 9 foot range, 6 to 8 foot.
And what's in front of your house could change, so you may have like a portion of the stormwater box somewhere near your property. Obviously, it's there right now, so that can change the visual appearance of it. Now, the design as well, it should still look nice, but okay.
My first concern was anything behind the fence was state line, so I'm okay if there's a little less green space there. My next question was, I know that at some point it was talking about bike lanes, that there are exceptions. And I know that people feel very strongly and they're entitled to their opinion too, but based on research that I've been doing, people who frequently ride a bike is less than 2% of the residents in Newburgh. So I'm just curious as to what some of those exceptions are.
So those exceptions were what Jake had listed off at the beginning of the meeting, and if you have the reference, you can, that, what Jake had is correct,
And then so R 366.514. Okay,
That's bullet point number 2 has the details.
okay.
Given that there is an active petition against doing the project at all, I would advise councillors not to authorise a survey at this time because it would put us in a difficult budget position. Rationally.
David, you have those core samples for the depths. We're gonna bring those to the next meeting.
You're talking about what?
Yeah, that requires you.
So I just got to it,
Sorry.
you're good, so. Fortunately, they just put it in a paragraph, so I'm trying to read it while I talk, give me like 1 more minute.
Well, he's wrapping up. We will, does anyone, June 4th or June 25th, are there strong preferences for our next meeting?
I'm out on the 4th, so.
You're out of town on the 4th?
Yep.
Does the 25th, June 25th work for the masses?
Would it be the same time, 5:30? Work until 6 o'clock.
Thoughts on
That might.
6 o'clock?
I serve at the council's pleasure.
With the 25th at 6 o'clock?
That's a Thursday, not a Tuesday, like.
Goes to Thursday.
That's a Thursday.
Mhm.
How long would you
I
need to?
typically have a out of town meeting on every Thursday, but I could get up, so it's why I'm fine.
The reason why we suggested Thursday was when lots of public comment about Thursdays, could it shift to Thursdays so that people could attend?
I'm good.
Was it the 25th?
Mhm.
I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Do we typically leave meetings an expected end time or to try to adhere to or not?
I hope it was 7 tonight. We went a little over.
Well, just for the one on, yeah, and starting at 6.
So 6, maybe shoot 6 to 8 is the goal for that one.
I could stay till midnight. No, my life for 7.5 years in this city.
So I have the answer to that, Jake. The current recommended pavement section is, 4.5 inches of asphalt over a 15-inch base section. So add that up to 19.5.
But you'll excavate for other utilities too, though, right? That's the part that I was.
Yeah, so.
I'm just asking, like, if residents want to go outside and look and take into consideration the fact that like trees might be impacted.
Yeah.
A practical view of that, it's 12 inches where you're doing the sidewalks. And then at the street level, it's probably deep.
Yeah, I mean, it'll vary. What's actually gonna drive how deep that is getting the concrete out of the
Okay.
ground, which we're told goes, basically, we did GPR, ground penetrating radar, it kind of goes between 10 and down to 4 inches, and it kind of varies.
Okay.
But anywhere you have, if you have to do any utility upgrades, to your point, you will have a trench that is typically like 4 feet
We
deep.
thought we had that as part of this.
There will be some utility upgrades.
Yeah, so
What's that add up to roughly?
it's hard to say, because like sewer relies on slope, so we don't,
Okay.
you'll have to know if it is a water line, I mean, that could be a shallow, it's like 3 feet.
Okay.
But, yeah.
I think there were 2 HB 2001 potable water lines that run east to west through the section. Is that right, 2?
I think they already did the water line improvements. I think there's some lateral tie-ins.
Yeah, but they did north-south, but then, while we have this road torn up, you would wanna either install sleeves or replace pipe to the limits of the intersection, so when they do laterals in the future, you're ready to go.
I'm writing 3 foot as a number just to have a.
And that would be the cover.
Yeah.
We didn't, did we talk about the discussion around trees, tree stipend concept?
We're gonna move that to our next agenda, so we have a
Okay.
great time for it.
Thank you, Jim, for your brilliance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to officially call it. Thank you so much.